At 5:27 local time, the carrier strike group moves steadily across open water. There are no alarms, no bursts of radio traffic, only the deep mechanical rhythm of a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier carving a clean path through the sea. Inside the Combat Information Center, the room is dim, lit mostly by the cold glow of consoles and displays. Sonar operators remain perfectly still, headphones sealed tight, eyes fixed on scrolling spectrograms that to anyone else would look like meaningless static. Then something changes. It is not a sound in the ordinary sense, but a pattern. A faint repeating frequency begins to emerge below the thermal layer, too deliberate for sea life and too controlled for normal surface traffic. It is subtle, almost restrained, like someone tapping softly on a steel door just to prove they are there. The sonar operator says nothing at first. He watches the signal settle, studies the rhythm, waits for it to become undeniable. Only then does he lean forward and report, "New subsurface contact, bearing 187. The room does not react immediately. Not yet. On the display, the contact holds its depth, maintains its speed, and stays on course. That is the first real warning. Random interference drifts. Ocean currents wander. Marine mammals appear and vanish in pulses. This contact does none of that. Its movement feels deliberate, controlled, intentional. The supervisor steps in behind the operator and studies the frequency bands without touching the console. He does not interrupt. He listens. Then, in a calm voice, he gives the order. Track it passive. No active ping. Across the CIC, more information begins to align. Towed array data from the escorts feeds into the picture. Nothing dramatic appears, nothing aggressive, only enough to shape a shadow in a part of the ocean where no shadow should be. The contact remains below the layer, using temperature and salinity to bend sound away from the surface. It is a classic tactic, old and proven. Effective too, but something about it feels wrong. The blade rate is too clean, too evenly spaced. This is not a merchant ship, it is not a research vessel, and it is certainly not wandering by mistake. The operator marks the track again. Contact is matching course. Speed steady, depth unchanged, matching course. That is no coincidence. That is shadowing. On the bridge, the officer of the deck receives the update without visible reaction. The carrier does not change speed. It does not alter course. There is no dramatic move, no sudden tension on the surface. That restraint is deliberate. Carriers do not flinch easily. But beneath that calm exterior, the strike group begins to move with a different kind of awareness. One escort drifts slightly wider on the starboard quarter. Another adjusts its speed by less than a knot. From the surface, those shifts are almost impossible to notice. Below the surface, they matter. The submarine responds. Its sonar trace becomes sharper, not louder, but clearer. It makes a small correction, tightening its relative position against the carrier's path. It wants to remain where it is. It wants to be sensed without fully exposing itself. At that point, this is no longer simple surveillance. It has become a message. In the CIC, the tactical action officer steps closer to the plot. Classification. The response comes carefully, professionally. Nuclear attack submarine, high confidence, no nationality confirmed. No assumptions, only data. The submarine stays passive, but its behavior says more than any transmission could. It is close enough to be noticed, close enough to remind the strike group of its presence, but not so close that it crosses the line. Not yet. Minutes pass. The contact remains steady. The distance compresses slowly as both formations continue on course. Then, without warning, the spectrogram spikes. A brief active sonar emission flashes through the water like lightning in a dark room. Short, precise, unmistakable. Every operator freezes. Active sonar carries a clear meaning. I know where you are. The ping is not accidental. It is directed, focused, controlled. A deliberate act calculated for effect. The tactical action officer does not raise his voice. Log the ping, timestamp, bearing, no response, no escalation. The carrier group absorbs the message in silence. But under the surface, the situation has changed. The submarine has spoken openly now, and by doing so, it has revealed more than it intended. The contact begins a slow acceleration, subtle at first, just enough to disturb the flow around its hull. At the edges of the signature, cavitation begins to creep in like breath, fogging a cold window. It is repositioning, not withdrawing, not committing, simply testing. Inside the CIC, uncertainty begins to disappear. The data is no longer vague. The geometry is now clear, and the intent no longer theoretical. Somewhere below, the submarine commander likely believes he has created pressure. He likely believes he has established leverage. What he does not know is that the strike group above has already begun closing the box around him, quietly and with complete discipline. No shouted commands, no visible panic, no dramatic deployment of force, only a calm and irreversible shift in posture. Deep below the thermal layer, the submarine waits with confidence, unaware that this moment is the closest it will ever come to holding the advantage. The contact does not fade, it does not drift away. It remains exactly where it is, just below the layer and just outside what would be considered reckless range. That alone confirms intent. Inside the Combat Information Center, the sonar team continues refining the track. Passive only, no noise, no emotion, only disciplined listening. The frequency profile stabilizes further. The propulsion system is nuclear. The harmonics are smooth, controlled, and modern. There is no irregular cavitation, no clumsy movement, no sign of an aging diesel boat feeling through difficult water. This submarine is operating exactly the way it was built to operate. And now it is becoming more assertive. Contact adjusting bearing, the operator reports. Intercept geometry tightening. That phrase changes the tone in the room. An intercept course is not observation, it is positioning. It means the submarine commander is no longer satisfied with following at a distance. He wants control of the angle, the spacing, and the perception of the encounter. He wants control of the story. And still, on the surface, almost nothing changes. The carrier continues straight ahead. Flight operations continue. From above, the ship appears almost indifferent. That is intentional. A visible reaction would reveal concern, and concern is a form of leverage. So none is given. Instead, the answer comes from the escorts. One destroyer eases farther outward, widening the perimeter. Another slides half a mile forward, a minor adjustment so subtle that civilian systems would never notice it. But underwater, these small movements redraw the acoustic battlefield. The submarine notices immediately. Its sonar trace shows micro-adjustments in depth and slight changes in speed. It is reacting now, not dictating. And that is its second mistake. A reacting submarine exposes decision cycles. It reveals timing, judgment, and confidence. One escort's towed array starts producing a cleaner picture. Not because the submarine has suddenly become noisy, but because it has drifted into geometry that no longer protects it. The ocean itself has begun turning against it. Then comes the moment no one fully expected. A second sonar ping, shorter than the first, narrower, more focused. This one is not exploratory, it is confirmatory. The beam sweeps across the carrier's acoustic shadow and returns with clarity. For the briefest instant, the submarine likely believes it has sharpened its understanding of the situation. What it does not realize is that clarity works both ways. In the CIC, the plot updates immediately. Bearing refined, range narrowed, confidence rises sharply. No one celebrates. This is not triumph, it is a threshold. The tactical action officer leans in and says quietly, "He's declaring presence. He wants us to know he's here." And that changes everything. The submarine is no longer hiding, it is posturing. And posturing creates pressure. Pressure invites response. But the response still does not come in the form of noise. Instead, the strike group expands its awareness. An anti-submarine warfare helicopter is placed on alert. Not launched yet, only prepared. Sonobuoys are staged, but not armed for anything beyond detection. Every action is measured. Every option remains open. Meanwhile, the submarine continues its slow maneuver, sliding laterally to maintain position off the carrier's beam. It is a dangerous place to remain, the kind of geometry meant to say, "I could be closer if I chose to be." The sonar operator watches the track tighten again. Contact maintaining parallel course. Parallel. That is not accidental. That is a challenge expressed in angles and distance. On the bridge, the captain receives the briefing in seconds. He listens, gives a single nod, and looks forward again. No change in speed, no change in heading. Let him make the next move. Below the surface, the contact hesitates. For the first time, its speed fluctuates just slightly. A half-knot increase, then back down. A probing motion, a test. The answer is silence. But silence is not passivity. Across the formation, sensors are now speaking to each other in layers. Information fuses. What began as a shadow becomes a shape. What began as suspicion becomes a track with memory, behavior, and prediction. The submarine commander still believes he has introduced uncertainty into the equation. He likely believes the carrier group must now account for him at every moment. What he does not realize is that the uncertainty has already shifted. It is no longer with the surface force. It is with him. Because once a submarine chooses to be noticed, once it chooses to announce itself, it gives up the one advantage that matters most. It stops being invisible. And when invisibility is gone, only distance, geometry, and time remain. And now all three are starting to move against him. The carrier strike group still does not react the way the submarine expects. There is no sudden course change, no surge in speed, no loud active sonar challenge. From below, that restraint may look like hesitation. It is nothing of the kind. What the submarine commander cannot see is the layered shift taking place across surface, subsurface, and air. Each change is quiet on its own. Together, they form a tightening net. The first shift is geometric. One escort drifts forward, not toward the contact, but beyond it. Another moves outward, stretching the acoustic perimeter. To an untrained eye, it looks like routine station keeping. To a submarine working on passive sensors, it feels like pressure without a visible source. Inside the CIC, the plot stabilizes into something far more dangerous than uncertainty. Predictability. Contact speed steady, the sonar operator reports. Depth unchanged. Unchanged depth means comfort. It means the submarine commander still believes the thermal layer is protecting him. That belief is becoming outdated. This section of ocean is complicated. Layered gradients, moving thermoclines, uneven acoustic behavior. The layer still bends sound, but no longer in a way the submarine can trust. It has drifted into a pocket where silence demands more than stillness can provide. A towed array begins to resolve the contact with unusual clarity. The propulsion harmonics separate from background noise like ink spreading through water. No dramatic announcement follows. The data simply gets better. The tactical action officer studies the display. The track now has weight, momentum, history. It is no longer a momentary glimpse. It is a behavioral pattern, and patterns can be anticipated. Above deck, an MH-60R helicopter is brought into position. The rotors remain still for a moment longer. No launch order is spoken aloud yet, only readiness. But readiness itself changes the balance below. The submarine adjusts again, making another minor course correction to preserve its place off the carrier's beam. It wants psychological dominance through proximity. What it fails to understand is that proximity without freedom of movement becomes vulnerability. The helicopter lifts off, not dramatically, not at high speed. It simply rises, clears the deck, and slips into a low orbit miles away from the carrier's most visible path. It does not transmit. It does not deploy sonar immediately. It listens. Its sensors do not replace the ships. They complete them. What the surface vessels hear as fragments, the aircraft hears as structure. The submarine feels that change, not the helicopter itself, but the altered character of the water around it. Reflections shift. Background noise behaves differently. The ocean no longer sounds the way it did minutes ago. For the first time, the contact increases speed by more than half a knot. That is not confidence. That is instinct. The submarine commander knows something has changed. He may not know what, but he knows the balance is no longer what it was. Inside the CIC, the report comes immediately. Contact accelerating, course deviation 5 degrees starboard. The submarine is no longer holding geometry, it is searching. The helicopter descends slightly and releases a single passive sonobuoy, not directly over the contact, but offset and carefully placed where the water itself will help complete the picture. No ping, no announcement, just listening. The buoy reports almost at once, clean, stable, confirming. No one in the room reacts beyond a brief nod from the acoustic supervisor. The track tightens again. The submarine makes another move. This time it goes deeper, slipping below the very layer it trusted, hoping deeper water will return ambiguity to the situation. Instead, it makes itself easier to understand. Down there, the water is colder and denser. Sound carries differently, sometimes farther, sometimes cleaner. The move meant to disappear has sharpened the outline. The helicopter completes a wide arc, remaining just outside what the submarine would label threatening. No aggressive maneuver, no visible intimidation, just controlled presence. The destroyers maintain their lines. No one rushes forward, no one crowds the contact. There is no need now. The tactical picture is complete. The submarine is inside a box it never realized had been built around it. Inside the CIC, the shape of the situation becomes unmistakable. It is no longer defined by weapons or sudden moves, but by something far more controlled. Physics, positioning, and patience. The tactical action officer speaks quietly, almost as if stating something obvious. He is no longer shaping the engagement. It has already shaped itself. No one argues. Far below the surface, the submarine commander still believes he is testing a carrier strike group, probing its reactions, measuring its limits. What he does not realize is that the test ended several minutes ago. The only question left now is how long it will take him to understand that the dynamic has completely reversed. The submarine begins its move. At first, it is barely noticeable, a slight increase in speed, measured in fractions of a knot. Just enough to alter the flow of water along the hull. Just enough to try and regain control of a geometry that has already slipped away. Inside the CIC, the change is immediate and clear. Contact accelerating. Then comes the follow-up, calm but decisive. Cavitation beginning at the edges. That single word shifts the atmosphere in the room. Cavitation means turbulence. Turbulence creates noise, and noise removes concealment. What was once hidden becomes traceable. Below, the submarine commander is acting on instinct. Speed, in most situations, creates distance. Distance creates safety. It is a principle taught and trusted. But this is no longer open ocean in the traditional sense. This is a controlled environment, shaped by multiple layers of sensors and coordinated movement. The moment the submarine accelerates, its acoustic signature sharpens. What had been a smooth, disciplined frequency now begins to break into complex harmonics. The propeller remains controlled, but the water itself refuses to hide it anymore. The contact is no longer a suggestion, it is a certainty. Above, the helicopter adjusts its altitude slightly, less than 50 feet. No urgency, no sharp movements, just a precise correction to improve its listening position. Then the order comes, simple and unmistakable, active. A single sonar pulse enters the water. It is not aggressive, not sustained, not overwhelming. It is brief, narrow, and perfectly timed. The signal travels outward, strikes the submarine's hull, and returns with clarity. Now there is no ambiguity. Bearing is locked, range is confirmed, depth is resolved. For the first time since the encounter began, the submarine is fully visible in the acoustic sense, exposed in all three dimensions. Inside the CIC, nothing changes outwardly. No alarms, no sudden escalation, no weapons prepared. Because this moment is not about destruction, it is about control. That ping was not used to hunt, it was used to announce. Below the surface, the submarine commander understands immediately. The sound is unmistakable, controlled, confident, and close. It carries a clear message without a single word. There is no more uncertainty. The submarine reacts with urgency. Speed increases further, crossing the threshold where silence is no longer sustainable. Cavitation spreads along the hull, turning discipline into noise. The vessel makes a hard turn, attempting to break free, choosing movement over concealment. That is the critical mistake. The moment it commits to that maneuver, the geometry collapses entirely. The destroyer positioned ahead tightens its angle. The helicopter shifts just enough to maintain full coverage. Passive buoys confirm what the active ping has already revealed. There is no direction left that is not observed. Inside the CIC, the assessment is delivered in a steady voice. He's trying to exit, he's late. There is no satisfaction in the tone, only clarity. The submarine slows down, not by choice, but by necessity. More speed only increases noise. Every adjustment adds more data. Every second strengthens the picture forming above. The commander below makes the only decision left available. Disengage. Speed decreases. Course stabilizes. The acoustic signature settles into something controlled again, but now it is tracked, understood, remembered. The strike group does not chase. It does not press forward aggressively. It does not attempt to corner or overwhelm. It simply allows the submarine to leave while continuing to observe. For several more minutes, the contact is tracked as it withdraws. Its signature remains clear, catalogued, unmistakable. Only when distance returns the situation to neutrality does the posture begin to relax. The helicopter returns. The destroyers ease back into their original positions. The ocean resumes its quiet, steady rhythm, as if nothing had happened at all. No weapons were used, no warnings were issued. No visible confrontation took place, and yet the outcome is absolute. The submarine approached a carrier strike group and, in real time, discovered the limits of initiative in a controlled environment. Because the true mistake was not being detected. The mistake was believing that detection meant immediate danger. In reality, it meant something more decisive. The encounter was effectively over the moment the submarine chose to reveal itself. Everything that followed was simply physics and coordination unfolding step by step. By the time the submarine slips beyond effective range, nothing on the surface appears different. The carrier continues forward. Aircraft operations proceed. Communications remain calm and routine. From the outside, it looks like nothing ever happened. And that illusion is the final lesson. Encounters like this are not measured by visible conflict or dramatic outcomes. They are defined by control of space, information, and time. From the first passive detection to the final confirmed withdrawal, that control never left the carrier strike group. The submarine relied on proximity to create pressure. It assumed that being close would introduce uncertainty. That belief is understandable. Submarines are designed around invisibility, around forcing others to react. But that entire doctrine depends on one fragile condition: remaining unseen. The moment the submarine revealed itself through its positioning, its maneuvers, and especially through that first active sonar ping, it gave up its greatest advantage. From that point forward, it was no longer a hunter, it became a variable. And carrier strike groups are built to handle variables. They do not depend on a single ship or a single sensor. They operate as layered systems where each element supports the others. Surface ships listen before acting. Aircraft extend awareness without revealing intent. Data merges quietly until uncertainty disappears on its own. The submarine was never facing one opponent. It was facing a network, and that network did not rush. It did not overreact. It did not need to. Time was already working in its favor. Every moment the submarine remained nearby, it provided more information. Propulsion characteristics, maneuver patterns, reaction timing, decision cycles. Everything was observed, recorded, and understood. What felt like pressure to the submarine commander was, from above, simply patience. That is why there was no pursuit when the submarine withdrew. No attempt to dominate the moment. No display of force, because the objective had already been achieved. The carrier was not protected by chance or intimidation. It was protected by inevitability, by the physics of sound, the geometry of movement, and the discipline of crews trained to let the environment do the work for them. In modern naval operations, dominance is not always visible. Often, it is almost invisible. The submarine departed intact, but it did not leave unchanged. It carried something with it: clarity. Clarity about where the limits truly are. Clarity about who controls the situation once those limits are crossed. And clarity about how little margin for error exists when facing a force designed not to react impulsively, but to endure and adapt. Back inside the CIC, the process concludes quietly. Logs are finalized, timestamps confirmed, acoustic records archived, another encounter documented, not as something unusual, but as something expected. The ocean returns to normal, but the lesson remains. Carriers are not protected by escorts alone. They are protected by coordination, restraint, and a deep understanding that strength does not always need to be demonstrated to be effective. Sometimes the most decisive outcome is the one that leaves nothing behind. No visible damage, no aftermath, no unresolved questions, just a quiet withdrawal. And a clear reminder that challenging a carrier strike group is not simply about capability or boldness. It is about understanding the rules of an environment where silence speaks first, and very often speaks last.